Okay, so except for the final adjustments and the fine-tuning, our video is pretty much done. So today we're going to add that little bit extra with some graphics and animation. Now, I'm no motion graphic designer, but I think even as an editor, it's good to know at least the basics within motion graphics so that you can add those little extra things to boost that production value. So we're back inside of Premiere Pro, and the first thing we're going to do today is to just clean up our timeline a little bit. As you add more and more layers, it's always nice to clean up a little bit every now and then so that you have some space to work with. And the first thing we can do is to just go through the videos and adjustment layers that are connected. So like this adjustment layer here that we created just to boost the exposure in our neighbor's face. So we can nest these two together by hitting N and rename it for neighbor. Same goes for these stair shots. There, this looks a lot cleaner, and if we want to later, we can always just open up these nested sequences if we want to make adjustments. We're also going to rename this adjustment layer from the last episode to, yeah, let's call it clarity or grade or both. All right, so now we're going to add our first text, and this goes on the office shot. If you remember from the preview, it's this a while ago. So it's super simple to add text. You can just hit the T on the keyboard, or you can find this down here, the type tool. So I'm gonna hit T, and I think somewhere around here, just click wherever you want to add it. And let's type in a while ago. And now we're going to go up to our essential graphics, make sure that the text is selected. And here we can change our font. And if you have installed the font, you should have a font in here that is called Montserrat or something like that. And just click on that. And I think we're gonna keep this thin style, but we can make it a bit smaller. So just highlight everything and let's type in 75 here. Looks pretty good. We can move it down. This is completely up to you, but I like to have it so it's almost the same distance from this edge to here as from this edge to here. So I think let's leave it at there for now. Then we're gonna drag it out over our clip. We're not gonna need it for the entire clip, so let's just render and watch it.
This is the... A while ago, I was sitting at home awaiting a package. Then the package came, so I went out to get it.
Yeah, so the place is pretty good, but it doesn't look so nice when it just pops in like that. So we're going to animate the position so that it gradually shows instead. So
a while ago, I was sitting at home.
Let's move in about a second. Click it and head over to the effect controls and set a keyframe for the opacity by toggling this stopwatch. And go to the beginning, drag this to 0, and then just click this arrow symbol here. Now we're just going to select our last keyframe, and we're going to pull this little handle down and in towards the middle, like this. And we're going to do the same thing with the other handle. So make sure you have a curve like this so that it starts slowly, goes a bit faster, and then it ends more smoothly like this. So again, let's render and watch.
A while ago, I was sitting at home awaiting a package.
It's nicer, but I still think the animation is a bit fast, so we can just pull out this keyframe a bit.
A while ago, I was sitting at home awaiting.
Yeah, that's better. And then we can just make sure that it starts right after this transition here.
A while ago, I was sitting at home awaiting a package.
Nice. And I think we need just a few seconds to read 3 words. So here we can just hit a new keyframe at 100, and then we're going to animate it so it goes away. So move down a bit and drag this down to 0. And now the keyframes are already a bit smoother, but we can just make the same slope as with the beginning keyframes. So something like that. Render and watch. Let's see from the start.
This is the incredible story of when I got my mail. Let's back up a bit. A while ago, I was sitting at home awaiting a package. Then the package came, so I went out to get it.
Yeah, I think it looks nice. And like I said, it's not super hard to add text and animate it like this, but we are going to just pull up our black bars because I think it's nice when the black bars is on top of everything and out of our way. But we are going to make sure that the graphics is on top of our adjustment layers because we don't want our color correction and our color changes to change our graphics. The next thing we're going to do, if you remember the preview video, every time the video pauses, there is this little pause sign that pops up, and that's what we're going to add now. So we can just drag in our pause sign from our project bin and add it to where our first pause is, which is here. And now it's a bit harder to see when we nested all our shots, but just stop when the video stops and drag the pause sign to there. And we of course need to scale it down. So go up to the effect controls and just type in 25. And then we don't want a black pause sign, we want a white one. So we can go over to our lumetric color again, scroll down to our curves and just pull this dot up until it's white. Great. And then we're gonna make sure that this is perfectly centered. And to do this, we can use safe margins. I have this symbol here, and if you don't have it, you can just hit the plus sign, find it here and drag it out like this. So let's activate that, and we can see that we have these 4 sort of cuts here. So to check the vertical side, we can just pull this to the edge here, and we can sort of eyeball it and see that it looks as though it's just a few pixels low. So I'm gonna take this up to like 530. I'd rather have it a bit above than a bit below. So I think 530 is good, and then just type in 960 on the horizontal to get it back to the middle, like this. And we can hide our safe margins. Now we're going to animate this. So instead of animating it with this, we're going to add a new effect called transform. So just search for transform. And on the distort, just pull that on top of our pause layer. Scroll down, and here you can see that we have the same transformation tools as we have here. But there is one significant difference that we're going to talk about soon. First, we're just going to animate this. And we're not going to animate the position, we're just going to animate the scale. So we can move 4 frames in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and set a keyframe here, because that's where we want the animation to stop. And then move 2 frames back, type in 110, and then go back to the first frame and hit 0. So now if we look, we have to render. So now if we look, we can see that it moves up a bit too big, and then it goes back into 100. And if we just play it back, yeah, like this. But the big reason to why we use the transform effect rather than just our motion effects up here is because here we can add natural motion blur. So we're going to uncheck this box here that says use compositions shutter angle. And then we're going to type in our own one, which is 180. And as we talked about in the exposure episode, 180-degree shutter rule is giving us the most natural looking motion blur. And that's what we want to this animation as well. So let's render and look at this. And to me, it looks sort of messed up. I don't know how it looks on your computer, if it's just my Premiere Pro, but maybe it is because I have 2 effects on here. So I'm just gonna copy my transform effect, delete it, and then I'm gonna nest my pause sign here and copy the transform effect. And now we can see that it moves straight towards the camera, which is good. But for some reason, it doesn't start at 0. It starts at 100, even though it says 0 here. So to fix this, I'm just gonna move in, change these two keyframes one step, and then I'm just gonna cut the first frame from the pause sign. Move back and set it where it's supposed to be. A bit annoying, but this is what we have to deal with Premiere sometimes. Yeah, so now the animation is good, but I do want it to be a bit longer, so I'm just gonna double click in here, drag this out, go back and drag this out until just the beginning of the transition here. Yeah, and if we were a perfectionist, we would also animate the pause sign to go away, but I'm not gonna do that because I don't think it's gonna be visible.
Let's back up a bit.
But the last thing we are gonna do before we copy this is to just add a drop shadow so it doesn't disappear in the white parts of the image. So go up to our effects and just search for drop shadow, drag that onto our pause sign, and now we can see that it added this gray shadow to our pause sign. And how you want this to look is completely up to you. You can raise the opacity to 100 if you want a sharper edge, more black like this. You can change the softness to, let's say, 40 if you want it to be more discreet. And you can change the distance of how far away you want the shadow to be. But I think I'm just gonna keep the default settings actually. Now I'm going to copy this to our next stairs clip, which is here. And make sure it's on the pause click there. And let's just render it.
There, you're all caught up now.
And then we want it to last until the video plays again.
There, you're all caught up now.
Great. And then we have 2 more pauses. So let's all drag this over to the hit, oh, right here.
Okay, fine, that's not what happened.
Good. And the last one is after the parkour sequence. And it should last for the whole sequence. Okay, it looks good, but I think I want it a bit smaller, so I'm just gonna go into the nested sequence rather than changing all of them. And I'm gonna make this 20 instead.
This is the incredible story of when I got my mail. Let's back up a bit. A while ago I was...
Yeah, I like it better like that, and you can of course change it however you want. And that's pretty much it for the in-video graphics. Now we're going to move on to our end credit scene, or our sort of animated background and text. Now I just dragged in my downloaded background, and if you haven't downloaded the background and you don't want to download it, you can just add a color matte for now, just so you can follow along with the tutorial. A color matte is basically just a colored still frame layer. And to create that, you can just right click in the project bin, new item, and color matte. And let's make it yellow for the sake of it. Okay. Okay. And then you can just drag it out to the end. But I'm gonna use the background since we have that downloaded. And I'm also gonna drag out the black bars a bit longer. All right, so let's just look at the background. A bit too static for my taste, but before we start animating this, we're just gonna duplicate it 3 times. And we're gonna nest it, call it background nest, and just clean up. Okay, so to animate the background, we can just use our motion effects here because we're not gonna need any motion blur on this. So let's just listen to where we want this to stop, the animation. Maybe around here. So hit a keyframe for the scale, and then go to the beginning and type in, let's say 115, render. That's super slow, so let's just create a curve. Go to the arrow key, you can zoom in a little bit and just drag this up like this. And here you can see that the animation's fastest part is here in the curve, and for some reason I can't pull this in anymore, so we're just gonna cut it here where we have our fastest part. You know what, let's pull this to 125 instead and just make a cut here on the fastest part, maybe, yeah, here. And let's look at that. Yeah, much better. And then I don't ever want this to just go out and stop there. So we're gonna keep animating it so it's sort of pulsing back and forth like this. And on every beat in the music, I want it to move either closer or further away. So let's just listen to the music. Here we have a beat. So I'm gonna set a keyframe just a few frames before the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Set a keyframe, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 maybe, because we want the beat to be in the middle. Let's move back to 115. And let's just leave the curve as it is and look at that. Okay, so very static. We can move the last keyframe out a bit and again try to create this sort of curve like this. Yeah, so sort of create this little hill again. Good. And then we again don't want it to stop, so right before the next beat we want to do the same thing, but now away instead, because now we're zoomed in to 115. So let's set a keyframe, move out and go back to maybe 105 and create this little smoothness curves. Okay, and render. Yeah, so that's better, but we still have these sort of pauses in the middle. And to fix that, we can just make sure that no value is the same on the keyframes. So our first, or technically our second keyframe is at 100. Then let's change keyframe number 2 to, let's say, 103. Then we have 15. 15 can change to maybe 18, 118. And then we have 105, and let's end with 110. So you don't have to do exactly like I do, but just sort of have the background pulsing. Okay, so it's still a bit too unsmooth. So I'm just gonna go and pull these handles to make sure that it's not so jagged. You know what, I'm gonna delete this one. See what that does. This is really just about experimenting until you find something that looks nice. Yeah, I think I can live with that. I'm not completely sure how long this is going to be yet, but we are going to add 3 different texts, so it should be at least 3 beats. So I think it's gonna end about here. So we're gonna have to keep animating this a little bit. So just type in some different random values like this. Okay, so this looks good for now. Now we're gonna animate the position, so it's more moving in this direction. And here it's about making pretty small changes. So I'm just gonna hit the position stopwatch here, move forward like 5 frames, change the position a little bit by just dragging in the middle, make sure that the motion is selected. Move forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then move a little bit more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And make sure that you keep an eye on these blue lines in the edges, the sort of borders of the frame, so you don't go inside like this. And now we can see that it automatically moved outside or inside the frame here, and that's because the scale has gone down to 100 on this keyframe. So I think we're just gonna change this keyframe to 102 instead, so we have some more room to play with. Keep animating the position. Don't make too big adjustments. Pull a little bit up, a little bit down to the sides. Just make it random until you're happy. So now I've done half, and if we look at this, we can see that it moves a bit too fast. So every 5 frame is a bit too tight, so I'm just gonna drag these out. Spread them out a bit more. And let's have a look at that. So now I'm happy with how the background is moving. Now it's time to add our first text. So just hit T or go down here to select the type tool. Click somewhere in the middle and write created by, and you can just write your own name if you want. And then we're gonna select everything, and if you haven't opened the Essential Graphics, go ahead and do that. And here we can see that we have some align tools, and this one will align center horizontally. So if we click that, it will go to the middle on this line. And we have the same one for the vertical line, so we're gonna click that. And then we're gonna change this to the other font that you might have installed, which is Crown, maybe, if it's called that. So just go ahead and find that and select it. And we want to change this to black instead of white. So scroll down a bit, and here you have the fill. So I'm just going to make this black, and we're going to add a white shadow. So just click this one and make it white if it's not, and drag the opacity up to 100%. Then you can, just like with the drop shadow, change some values here to make it more blurry or change the distance of the shadow, but I'm gonna keep the distance at 4 and then the blurriness at 0. Then I'm gonna make this text centered, and I'm gonna realign it, and I'm gonna make this created by text a bit smaller. So let's say 50, like that. Okay, good. And realign it. And now we can see that this has some space above, so I'm guessing this is not in the middle. If we activate our safe margins and drag this out, I'm just gonna pull this up a little bit so it's just above the middle. Reset it at 960. Okay, and then we can pull it down. And then we're going to animate this, but instead of doing everything one more time, we can just copy the values from the background, or copy this motion effect, Control C or Command C on Mac. Click the create layer and just hit V. And now if we click play, we can see that it's actually sort of sticking to the background. And that is because the values are the exact same way. So instead of moving all the keyframes, you can just hit Y on the keyboard to open up this slit tool, And what that does is if you hold and drag on the clip, it changes the timing of the clip without changing its position. So that's very helpful sometimes. So let's move this down 2 seconds. And if we look at it again, yeah, we can see that the values are different now. So just scroll a bit until you find a value that you like. Yeah, so I think there is nice. And then we're gonna make sure that this text layer is long enough, and we want this new text to come in at the beat of the music. Yeah, so I think it's long enough. We can make it a little longer. And then we're gonna duplicate this, so just hold Alt and drag it over. And this one we can do the same thing with the slip tool, just move it around a little bit. So it doesn't move the exact same way as the other one does. And we're gonna rename this to, again, you can write whatever you want. And there on the next beat, here, we can duplicate this again and write something else. And then just make sure that the animation looks good. I think I'm actually gonna uncheck or deselect the scale stopwatch and just keep the position. Okay, good. So the timing is terrible and the animation is terrible, but we're gonna nest all of these three. So just good. So now we're gonna animate these and fix the timing. So the first thing we're gonna do is to go to our effects and drag in the transform effect. And find where the beat in the music is. Yeah, so it's around here. So we can set a keyframe to the position, and then we can move forward like 15 frames or something. Yeah, if you have room for that. Maybe move back a little bit. And then we're just gonna drag this so it goes out of frame. And then move back to the first keyframe and make sure that the executive clip right on that keyframe. And we can just duplicate the transform effect, add it to the executive shot, and move the keyframes to the start and just change it so it goes from below to ending up in the middle, which is 540. And then with the next beat there, we're gonna do the exact same thing. So I'm just gonna copy these keyframes so I know the distance. And I'm gonna go from center and out like the other one. And then we can just copy this transform effect to the association shot and make sure it starts at the first keyframe where the executive shot is moving out. So like this. Great. Yeah, that looks pretty weak. So we're gonna animate the position like we've done with the stopwatch and the curves. So just choose the last keyframe and drag it to the bottom and out. So we want it to go out fast and the next one coming in fast and slowing down gradually. So do that to all of them. And render. Yeah, I think for the first one we can almost see that it's pausing just beneath the black bars. So we're gonna pull that up a little bit extra. Good, and then we're gonna uncheck this use compositions shutter angle and write 180, just like we did on the pause sign. Do that to all. And render. Actually, we don't have to animate this going out. We can just leave it. And then we can also make the music sort of fade out. So set a keyframe. Go to maybe -30. So that makes us done with the end credit. I'm not gonna give credit to my neighbor or Erica. I'm just gonna take all the credit myself. In the next episode, we are going to do some fine tuning and some final adjustments that we might have forgotten about, or let's face it, that I have forgotten about along the way. But since that is so much up to personal preference, we're just gonna focus on the most important fine tunes. Otherwise, the episode is gonna be about exporting and exporting settings. So if you made it this far, there's only one more left, and I will see you in that one.